Nature loves to hide herself in plain sight. She hints at one meaning under many forms. From scientific discoveries like epigenetics to the living water of Yeshua's teachings, we glean something deeper. It's some sort of connecting fabric that's present within all things. Think of that iconic scripture that says, "Truly, unless one is born of water and spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is spirit." It's iconic because, in part, it's one of the few passages that reflects our triune nature of mind, body, and soul. Moreover, it still alludes to this unitive aspect at the core of all being. Think about it. If all matter has a singular source, including flesh, which is 60% water, it's no wonder that water has always been a symbol of life. Mother Earth is a universal reference to this world spirit that carries the seed of creation within her womb. But Adonai Echad, right? Our God is one. Everything exists within that unity. Like universe expanding from a singular source, a single divine mother of soul, our singular conscious is aware of being. Now we spend our entire lives feeling separate from others or focused on our singular natures with almost no regard for that interconnectedness. And that is where the wisdom of Yehoshua really shines. Y'all already know what it is, so rock with it in mind, body, and soul and take that journey within. What up, though? It's your boy Justin jumping back into another mystical mind state. Now, I want you to take every preconceived notion of Yeshua that you have and put it on a shelf. Evangelicals have really messed up the PR campaigns on this one, so forget every single thing they have ever said. And understand that I probably dislike those types way more than any of you. A, religious trauma. B, religious trauma. And C, religious trauma. And I've worked through the pre-Kabbalist systems of the Second Temple period and know how ignorant Christians are of their own tradition. Sprinkle in a couple of misinterpretations, some misogyny, and some anti-Semitism, and you end up with this monster of religion completely unattached from its mystical roots. But this isn't new. Yehoshua himself called certain religious leaders in his day a den of vipers. There's always been those who were drawn to religious systems because of the power those positions wield. When these sorts of narcissists gets to hide their lusts behind piety, we, the sons and daughters of the churches, get to suffer, yeah? Ask other Gen Xers why they didn't raise their own kids in church. Now, here's where it gets real. Those traumas we're suffering from live rent-free within us. To understand the wonderful world of water and flesh requires a look at the science of epigenetics and stress. Fight, flight, or freeze exist in our bodies with all of those other chemical responses required by survival of the flesh. Our personas are created over time by the cascades of chemicals that fire off based on the characters we play in the world. Our souls take the shape of these decisions, and we either become blinded by our ego or we shine brightly from within or do a mixture of both over the years, right? Each decision leads to habits that physically get etched into our brains, and that's how we develop demeanors and tastes and admirable traits, addictions, and character flaws. All of this developing deep within the waters of our subconscious. Consider what that implies for a minute and ask yourself, is being born again, renewed of water and spirit, a simple shift in our thinking? Probably not. That would be really, really arbitrary. Like, we could just fix everything on the surface and restrict around things we used to enjoy because our new groupthink homies don't necessarily find normality in the madness that we originally came from, right? And that sort of commitment is trite. Like, it's really easy to make. Or we can choose this day whom we serve and decide to do something better, right? So we either make a new mask and bury all that nastiness in our subconscious, or we throw away the characters we used to play and dig deep into our own traumas. Doing that, our manipulations will fade and we stop shifting blame and we accept responsibility for the damage that we've done. So one leads us to being humble and the other lands us in the realm of spiritual ego, right? You know, We either get super judgy and look down on people who don't make a complete 180 turn, or humility and compassion give us purpose. Our why provides us hopes we haven't considered in decades. We ride this wave in a pink cloud for a while, and everything starts to turn around until those traumas that live rent-free in our body get triggered. Something comes up, shit happens, it is what it is, and our old inner enemies start whispering in our heads again. Those coping strategies that worked so well in the past start looking like a good idea again, right? And that brand new you feels defeated, and then it withdraws, and all of those emotional walls start going up again. Just nod if you feel me. All right, now, if we haven't just been paying lip service and we've actually been trying to change and we've actually been working through our baggage, the need to pour out the creatures and empty ourselves out before the divine becomes louder than our desire to escape the pain. See, all of that effort to surrender in prayer and meditation will make new pathways in our brains if we let it. Our minds surrender, our flesh falls on its knees, and our souls collapse into the embrace of cosmic union. It's like Eleanor Roosevelt used to say, it's better to light a candle than it is to curse the darkness. Be the change, right? Now, think of the last commandment Yehoshua gave his disciples. It was a simple, love one another. Nothing rocket science-y about that, right? None of that extra stuff matters. We are asked to live in love, not judge such and such a sex life or decide what type of fate Mr. Fast-ass little grandson deserves. None of that. We are asked to love to the best of our ability. But that's the thing about love, isn't it? Don't know love, can't show love. Trigger warning. If my mother was backhanded to act right, talking about spare the rod, spoil the child, then how am I finna be raised? In rage? With anger? With pain? They used to say these were generational curses, but now we know better. See, there's this wonderful research done by Dr. Moshe Zaif and Dr. Michael Meany. They came out of the McGill University, and it's called the Lick Your Pup Study. They noticed that some rat mothers licked their pups after being handled by members of the team, while others sort of ignored their anxious pups being put back down. Not only that, but the rats who received extra love from their mothers grew up to be calmer and more laid back as adults. Dr. Meany was able to provide proof that the maternal licking actually stimulated a chemical change in the glucocorticoid receptor of the brain, the mechanism that regulates how much stress hormone gets released from the adrenal gland. Hold up, forget about the stress response system. Moms licking their pups release a cascade of serotonin into the babies. It's nature's equivalent of popping some Xanax in a little pupper's mouths after they get manhandled by scientists. Now, our bodies and minds continue to develop well after we're born, but science doesn't quite have it mapped out yet. Like there's 67 billion miles of code, on our genetics, right? So we've barely even scratched the surface. And then there's epigenetics, the study of changes in organisms caused by modifications of gene expression rather than alteration of the genetic code itself. Putting that in plain English, it's like saying if our genes are little bumper cars racing down miles of genetic code, then our epigenetics would be the bumpers. They act like buffers between the environment and our genetic makeup. Now let's take another look at those rat pups. The less grooming the rat received as pups, the more stress hormones the rat released as an adult. Even more telling, high liquor moms tended to birth high liquor moms, whereas impartial mothers birthed impartial mothers. We're used to thinking of inheritance in terms of letters of the DNA code that come from eggs and sperm. However, the rat liquor story tells us there's a whole other pathway to our offspring's DNA. They even took pups from low-licking moms and passed them on to high-licking moms to test that theory. What they discovered is high-licker moms would write information onto any pups that completely bypassed the eggs and sperms. Are you hearing what I'm saying here? Those pups would then become high-licker moms themselves, even if they weren't blood relatives. Epigenetics gives our genome a bit of flexibility that would allow for us to adapt to whatever environment we're born into. This is game-changing, guys. Nature versus nurture can be tossed on its head as we accept that it's not either or, but more of a both and type of situation. Also, we see how dangerous it is to leave people in hostile environments for prolonged periods of time. Science sort of dips back into old school religious ideologies. Now, I'm not talking about demonology or any of that nonsense. That seance your Aunt Sally did back in the 70s isn't going to turn into a pea soup in the face of Father Karras, like exorcist situation, right? Yes, Exodus states that visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation is a thing, but none of that says shaitan. So miss me with all that trauma your local spirit-filled hate mongers peddle to their congregations every Sunday. Evangelicals love to take that verse and tie it into Deuteronomy where it says,
I have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing. Therefore choose that both you and your descendants may live.
But none of these yo-yos will ever point out how choice plays a role. It's easier to blame a spirit of alcoholism than it is to look at what can be done to treat a child suffering from the neglect and the abuse that comes from a result of alcoholism. Think back to the pups who would grow up to be high liquor moms themselves, even if they weren't blood relatives of the people showing them love. So while a certain level of genetic predisposition put into effect when generations are all raised in high-stress situations is a thing, it only takes one person to decide that enough is enough and break those chains. You can start rewriting the epigenetic code of your bloodline just by becoming the loving and caring person you wanted as a child. Not to be a complete religious cliche, but be the change that you want to see in the world. Wow. That's what Yehoshua's water and spirit is. It's a shift in our consciousness that embraces the world's soul. And that soul has a whole set of bumpers in it that allow for the adaptability vital for our species' survival. Look, there's a lot we still don't know about epigenetics. I could do 15 to 20 posts on childhood traumas, but none of that really translates into what I'm shouting off the rooftops here. Yes, there are switches that fire off in our developmental years, but it's not your fault. You aren't cursed to a life of repeating the same mistakes your ancestors did. Like Corey Taylor said, St. Jude is the patron saint of lost causes, but no cause is lost if there's still one person devoted to it. So Jude might as well be the patron saint of us all. There is no such thing as lost causes. We can break free and become the people that we want to be in life. This takes a little bit of work.